All right, Hossein, this is the first question. It's the boring one, and then I promise you it gets more exciting from here on out. But it's really not that boring. Tell me your franchise story. How did you fall into this industry that we both occupy?
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure, Nick. Um, I started. I'm actually an engineer by degree, and my experience in engineering goes back to Motorola days for a decade or so. That I led a big team developing pagers back in the day. If you know or your audience knows what those are, and then cell phones. Completely dating myself, but I left that and I developed a technology company that grew very quickly, and that company got bought out. And then I did some work for various government agencies, including the Department of Defense and the Secret Service. And then I developed a product which allowed parents to have an identification of their child available handy in their pocket, in their folder, and in addition to also their cell phone, in case their child went missing. So we would basically go to schools and daycares, fingerprint kids, photograph them, and then measure their height and weight, and then provide the parents with a set of IDs that could be used in a time of need, right? So that company was called Guardikit, and it grew very quickly here in the Miami area. And then, of course, the next question was, how do I get this nationwide? And being that it's a child related business, you're very much worried as to, I don't want an employee in another city to be handling kids. I need an owner operator, a person that's fully committed, the person that has a skin in the game. And that's where I started teaching myself about the world of franchising. So, to make the long story short, I franchised that business. And in the next 5 years, that business grew to 175 franchises in 11 countries. And it was ranked among the top 50 or 100, depending on the year, fastest growing franchises in America. And it was ranked among the top 500 franchises by Entrepreneur Magazine every single year of its operation. That company in 2010, which was 5 years after its inception, was actually it was bought out. It was acquired. That was the way I got into the franchise world, and then we can talk about how we got to where we are today.
So, a few things to unpack. One, you weren't on a franchise path. I mean, the reality is you were thinking much bigger, much differently than traditional franchising and working with governments, where you come up with an idea, the engineering background, which most franchisors would say an engineer is the worst possible franchisee ever because you're going to come and fix everything. And so you fall into this business model. Talk about your process. If at that moment of one, what was your perception of franchising, and two, how did you go about even franchising your business?
So the perception of franchising for me was an ideal model. And the reason I thought at the time, and again, the more I learned about it, the more I realized how what a perfect system it is for a franchisor, for myself, a business owner that wanted to expand. Having someone that's putting their money into your dreams, and they're putting their money, their time, their resources in opening a location to do exactly what you tell them to do was ideal. You only have two options. Well, if you don't want to give up equity in your company, okay, that's your third option, is to get an investor in. But no one wants to give up equity. Nobody wants to become an employee again after you've been an employer, right? So, but if you don't want to give up any equity, you have really two options. You can open these locations on your own, or you can franchise it. So if you open these locations on your own, yet now you have employees that don't have a vested interest in your business. The worst thing that can happen is you fire them. So they can screw up your business, they can destroy your reputation. They're having a bad day with their spouse or whatever the case is, and they bring it to work and they destroy your brand. And the most you can do is fire these guys. They go off and they get another job. And here you sit back and have to deal with the destruction that they left behind. In the world of franchising, I learned very quickly that is exactly the opposite. Now you have an owner operator, the person that's putting their money there, they're putting their time in, just like you did. They care about your business the same amount as you care about your business. You care about it because you put your money and time into it. They care about it because they put their money and time into it. As a matter of fact, they put more money than you because they also, in addition to the startup cost, they're also paying a franchise fee. So for that reason, they care about this business and they put their full time and effort into it. They go to sleep at night, they put their head on the pillow, and the first thing and last thing in their mind is, what do I do with my business to make it better? So, that perception is, for me, was the perfect model. For my particular business, which related to children, was absolutely the right model. But that same analogy is true for any other business, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a gym. People worry about, here at Franchise Creator, people call us and they say, oh, I'm worried about my recipes. I'm worried about the food not being perfect. I'm like, well, you have 4 locations. Why are you not worried in your 4th location, 3rd or 2nd location, that the same problems exist? You're not there. You can't be in 4 locations at the same time. But when you sell a franchise, that franchisee is there on top of that location every single day. How did I go about franchising my business? Well, that was my entrance in the world of franchising. So I started researching a whole lot about this model. So I did some of the work on my own, but then I hired an attorney. And I always tell my clients, hiring an attorney alone is probably the greatest mistake you can make in franchising your business. Attorneys are fantastic at what they do, and that is in legal work. As a matter of fact, a lot of these attorneys, there's really no particular field of franchising that they study. They study business law and they come out and they practice, franchise law because they read the NASA guidelines and so forth and so on, whatever is put out by the Federal Trade Commission. But in the bottom line is, attorneys have never sold a franchise. They've never dealt with an unhappy franchisee. They've never dealt with territory expansions and multi-unit purchasers and all the different things that comes with the business side of this franchising. So that attorney has to be combined with a consultant that has a real world experience in growing a franchise network. So that I didn't have at the time. So I paid the toll. I paid the dues because I became a consultant on my own, where in reality, a lot of mistakes were made till I finally perfected the process. And that came with time and that came with money. And this is one of the biggest recommendations that I tell people, clients of mine, don't ever make that mistake. You hire an attorney, it's a huge mistake. Hire a consultant and hire an attorney. 2 things at the same time. Or a consultant can refer to you the right attorneys. That's even a better situation.
Yeah, you're still saying find the attorney, but use someone that understands franchising to pair up with that attorney. I mean, one of my friends who I do a lot of podcasts with, I mean, he would be the rare one. He actually built a franchise and went through that process in conjunction with it. So it's almost like he learned the school of hard knocks being a attorney, and you learned it being a consultant. So love that process. And so you go and franchise your business. 2010, you exit. What happens between 2010 and your next thing?
So I went into retirement and I realized that I have 2 left arms. I can't play golf. So I realized that I'm not a couch potato. I was too young to be one. So, and I have so much, juice in my tank as far as, creativity and creating new businesses. I've always been an entrepreneur, a businessman. So, and a few companies came to me and said, Hossein, you did very well with your franchise. You grew it incredibly fast. It was ranked here, there, everywhere. Help us with our brand. So I helped a couple of companies and I realized that there's a business here. So that's when I started a company called Franchise Creator. I looked at the space, and this space was occupied by a lot of other franchise consulting firms. Most of these guys didn't really have a real world experience. They basically, have been in franchising for a while. They were a franchisee. They were a master franchisee. They had franchise experience, but they didn't necessarily have a franchisor experience. And I realized there is a potential here for someone that has the real, battlefield experience, bullet wounds to prove it. And that's when I entered this field. And we started a company called Franchise Creator. And our goal was very simple, is to help small businesses learn the world of franchising and be able to select the right businesses and enter them into the world of franchising by providing the entire service. It wasn't like you hire us and we give you this much and then you got to go hire this guy that does that much. We wanted to do the entire gamut. Of course, we do everything except the legal work. The legal work, we provide a list of attorneys that we refer to our clients that can help them with that side of the business. But we set up the entire thing for these attorneys, right? I mean, look, you mentioned a very experienced attorney. That's fantastic. If there is a guy out there or a girl out there that has gone the distance, that's perfect. But the truth of the matter is when you tell the attorney about the franchise fee, is going to say, well, I don't know what the franchise fee should be. You tell me, what do you want it to be? 30, 40, 50? Tell me. How about the royalty? I don't know, 5%? Let's go with 6%, and that's not how it works. You have to do a thorough study of the market before you come up with with everything about the structure of your franchise. And that's why that is incredibly important. Franchise Creator was launched in 2011. Today, we are a leading brand in the entire franchise consulting world. We have franchised, Nick, 700 companies. We have seen some of these companies come to us with 1 or 2 locations, and within 2, 3, 4 years, we've been able to turn these guys into tens of locations, in some cases, hundreds of locations, and with multi-million-dollar valuations, tens of millions, and in some case, even $1 billion valuation. So we're very proud of what we have accomplished, and we franchised businesses in pretty much every field you can imagine. And just recently, we were actually acquired by a private equity firm. This is as recent as 30 days ago.
Awesome. So a few comments and then a follow-up question. So from where I stand, I've always felt transparency is so critical for the buyer. And unfortunately, in franchising, I don't know that the buyer is as protected as they need to be. And part of that is because we've swung into such a broker-heavy community that we have all these people that are willing to say, yeah, I know you have a passion to own a kid franchise, but you would actually be better for senior care. And it's simply because of the fees that they get. I agree with you that if there's a business attorney that tries to get into franchising, that's dangerous because the best practices don't exist. They're just practices. And therefore, the guidance back to that franchisor can be weak at best. And I also think that, unfortunately, there are many businesses that shouldn't be franchised. When we're looking at a business on the consultancy side, when we're doing the marketing, before we even get into tactics, we have to look at the viability of a business opportunity. And unfortunately, there have been many that have been franchised that don't really have the meat on the bones. What's the cost to get in? How much can I make? Who's the leadership behind this? And what does validation look like as layer one before we even get into anything else? And so I tee all this up from my opinions that it's like the industry should be more responsible of who's a franchisor so that someone that's going to invest their life savings into a business that they have little to no control over can be set up for the greatest shot at success. When you're evaluating a business, they've come to you, they say, I want to franchise this. You're looking at it. What is the governor that you put on it, whether you actually think it's a viable franchise or not? And then if you don't think it's viable, what's the advice you give back to that business to go get it viable?
That's a great question, Nick. And I always tell people, they tell me, what business are you in? And I always tell them we're in the education business. We're not in the franchise business. We just happen to do franchising, but our main thing is education. Franchising is such a niche thing in this world of business. A lot of people don't know anything about it. When you mention franchise, they say, well, I'm not at McDonald's yet. I'm not at Subway yet. Right. Not realizing that McDonald's and Subway started exactly where they were when they were franchising. And franchising is the reason why they are now a brand called McDonald's or Subway. So, and this is the message that we try to take to people. But you're absolutely correct. Although almost all businesses are franchisable, there are some that are not, right? So when we evaluate a business, we look at certain things. People say, well, I need to have two locations, I only have this one location. I don't think I'm franchisable. Well, some of the most successful franchises that we have put out in the last 10 years have been businesses that had only one location. The number of locations is irrelevant. Every single franchise that I built for myself had one location when I franchised it. We recently franchised another business of mine called Combo Kitchen, and it had one location barely open when I franchised it. Within the first 2 years, we sold over 200 franchises, and it's ranked among the top 50 fastest growing franchises by Entrepreneur Magazine. So that McDonald's had one location. So, a lot of these brands had one location when they went to market. So we don't look at the number of locations. We don't look at the length of time you've been in business. We do look at the length. Obviously, if you've been in business for 2 weeks or a month or 3 months or 4 months, no, I don't think you're ready to do anything. The jury's still not out on your business. But when I look at a business that has 2 or 3 years been in business for that long, I look at the reviews. And reviews for me is very important because I'm not judging your business. If, for example, let's use a restaurant. When you have 500 reviews and almost a five star, 4.9, 4.8, 4.5 even, what is that telling me? That's telling me that a lot of people are liking your product. And then, okay, great. What does that say? That says it's not particularly that those people were hand selected to like your product, unless you've been unethical in your review process. But assuming that the review process was ethical, that tells me that that business is duplicatable. Now, we look at the processes within the business. We look at, first of all, the psychology of the owner. Is this the type of person that is interested to growing? Or do you have one foot in retirement and dragging the other one in? Depends on you, right? And again, age is not the concern. The concern is, what is your attitude for growth? If we gave you 5 new locations, do you have the means to handle this capacity and be able to do that? So that's incredibly important. Your commitment to the world of franchising, it's incredibly important. Every one of these guys that's buying a franchise, they're spending most likely their life savings into your dream. So you have to take that responsibility and be completely ethical about it and care about the fact that you just changed that person's life, hopefully for the better, and not for the worse. So you have to have that responsibility on you that you want to grow, right? You have that goal. And then we work with these business owners on processes that need to be in place. So if you have a particular food that you're cooking in your restaurant, and your mother-in-law is putting the recipes together, and she's got this secret marinade that's being used, well, obviously that's not franchisable. If your recipes or your marinations or whatever it is that you do, that particular localized thing that you've come up with, is it transferable to other locations through Cisco's, US Foods, and all of these guys? Can they take over and become your distributor? So we look at a variety of things, and then availability of vendors for all of the products. If you're a gym, those equipment that you have, is it available everywhere? And then we look at the background of the owners, right? We want ethical owners. We want people that have a clean background, because as we go to register in various registration states, we want to make sure that your record of bankruptcy, record of felonies and things like that are clear. That paves the road for a unparalleled expansion. So there's a lot of different things we look at, but this is just a highlight of some of the things that are very, very important to us.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, at the end of the day, and I've seen plenty on my side. We'll get brand X and call it lessons learned. There was one recently that came to the table. It was a food brand, and he goes, "Why can't I sell my franchise?" And I said, "Well, tell me. Let's talk through the numbers." He says, "I'm doing $1.5 million sales." I said, "Great. What's your net?" And he goes, "My net is 10%. I said, "Okay, so that means a franchisee is going to have to do $1.5 million sales to make 3% net?" He goes, "Well, when you put it that way," I go, "So the payback period on the initial investment could be the entirety of the franchise agreement?" Well, when you put it that way, and I think the challenge is there was someone that was willing to help this guy franchise his business, didn't say, well, pause a second. You are a great corporate business. At the end of the day, you're going to take home $150,000 and you can feel very proud about that. But you've not engineered this as a franchise. You either need to take the cost of operations down or you're going to have to get the volumes much higher than that. And so I do respect, like, look at the reviews, see what the buzz is, and then start diving into profitability. And then, frankly, the magic sauce, if it's not well capitalized, is going to be the founder, the leader. Like, if there's no energy to go make franchisees successful, then they're going to struggle. I've said this to a lot of brands. I get brands that say, I want 100 units sold next year. I say, well, what's the most you've done in a year? And they go 20. I go, great. So you're going to multiply your budget by 5. And they go, well, no, we're going to magically go sell 100. I say, well, wait a second. What if you put the same energy to growing fatter versus taller? Like, let's work on unit level economics. And if your franchisees start making more money, they're going to swallow up more territories. And so I think that the challenge is, and I go back to a lot of people, even you've decided to franchise your business. You went and hired an attorney who didn't understand franchising. Mistake one, you had to build yourself up as a consultant, which ends up having tremendous value back to your career anyway. But you look back at those processes, so many human beings don't even know what franchising is. So the education of what this is, what is viable, what's a point of differentiation in a product, and how do you actually scale this thing is totally missing from franchising as a whole. And therefore, it's the ethical responsibility of the consultancies to say, maybe you're not ready to franchise, and maybe these are the pieces that you need in order that when you turn on the faucet, you have an opportunity to grow at whatever pace you're interested in growing at.
You're absolutely correct, Nick. And one of the first things that we do is we look at and you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned about the profitability of the business. Now, mind you, Subway had 2 locations that were both losing money when they franchised, and they grew very, very fast. Obviously, 43,000 locations. They just sold the company for $9 billion to Roar Capital. But in general, if you have a P&L that's poor, but the first thing we do is we look at your P&L and we go through every item in your if you're doing $1.5 million in sales and doing 10%, there's something wrong with you. So we're going to fix you. We're going to fix you first before we go to market. And if that means you're not fixable, there is no going to market. So we look at certain things. What is your food cost? We keep talking about restaurants. Obviously, this is the largest sector in franchising. What is your food cost? We've looked at P&Ls, and the guy's food cost is 42%. Like, you're out of your mind. You cannot have a restaurant with a 42% food cost. Let's bring the food cost down. We know how to help you with that. Let's look at your credit card fees. Oh, you're getting totally raped with your credit card fees. Let's fix that. Let's bring your credit card fees down. We look at your payroll. There's holes in your payroll. Let's fix those. So how many full-time employees you have versus how many part-time employees do you have? Can you have more part-times and less? All of those things we look at. And then once the profitability comes to a point that now the restaurant the franchisee who's going to buy your restaurant can afford to pay a 5 to 6% royalty and yet still make a decent living out of it, that's when we say you are now ready for franchising.
All right. So now you've exited at least part of the business to private equity again. Congratulations. That's another exit in your checklist. What's next for the business? How do you stay involved? Where do you go in the next year or few?
So I'm staying on as the CEO of the company. This private equity that purchased us, their interest is for us to grow significantly, right? And so there's a lot of money and time is being put and resources is being put to make us into even a larger company. One of the parts that we didn't talk about is franchise development, building a business, taking a business to a franchise world is a part of what we do. The second part of what we do is franchise sales. We actually take every one of our clients that are interested to grow, we take them and we sell franchises for them. So that part of the business is one that's been growing throughout the years. And the highlight here is to grow that even larger and to become the world's largest franchise sales organization. So that is what you're going to see from Franchise Creator in the next 12 to 24 months. we do a variety of services outside of that. Where we also obviously all the franchise renewals and audits and everything else are things that we handle. We've been mostly focused with the services that we provide to be provided to our own clients, 700 clients that we have. But now we're going outside of that, and we're talking to other franchisors, larger and smaller franchisors, that can utilize our services. And we're also putting together a list of services that these franchisors can utilize. So that's the future of Franchise Creator. But a lot of shaking and baking going on this side. But we're looking forward to the next 12 to 24 months to see a newer company.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it. Obviously, I have the website up on the screen for more information. And who knows, maybe someone runs into this and learns a little bit more about franchising their business. Maybe they push pause before they call you and make sure that they have viability of it. But then when they call you, they reach out when they're ready. So thank you so much, Hussein. It was great chatting with you. This is another episode of Meet the Supplier.